Alright everybody, today we're going to do a real quick spur of the moment around the world update here. I realized this morning that it's been quite a while since I've done one. I honestly don't even remember what I covered in the last one or how much I've actually done since the last one. So we're going to go tank to tank as usual. I will try to touch on some highlights of each tank and what I've been doing with them or what plans I have for them. And then we'll just go around the room and see what's going on. This is my 29-gallon miscellaneous tank, and as usual it doesn't have anything going on in it. I haven't really done anything to it at all. This is my tank that just sort of sits here and ticks over like a clock. Nothing really changed in there. I didn't even do a water change this week. So moving right along to my gourami tank. The gourami tank doesn't have a lot going on. I can't really think of anything I've done in there. Sorry about all of the glare on the tank. The way I've got the crayfish tank set up behind me, it really shows up as a bad glare in this tank unless I stand at a real funny angle. A couple of things. I did shoot some video this week. I got a little bit of my striped Raphael catfish out and about swimming around, and to my delight, my Farlowella catfish, my twig or whiptail catfish, depending on what you want to call it, has reappeared, and I've been seeing him quite a bit more in the tank. In fact, I can always pretty much find him because I know where he lives now. If you look in the far end of the tank and you can see in the glass and the reflection, you will see right on the bottom end of where the filter intake, the sort of screen meets the tube. You can see that little line right there. That is actually the Farlowella catfish. That's the body of its head, and then its tail hangs all the way down to the bottom of the intake there. So he is still in there. He's out and about. I see him fairly regularly. He actually gets on this piece of wood right here and works away at it. The Farlowellas are a catfish that has to have wood in their diet for their own health. So I've got plenty of woodwork in this tank for him to chew on. And other than that, I really can't think of anything else going on here in the gourami tank. So we will move right along to the angelfish tank. Now, once again, here's a tank that I don't really do a lot with. I did a water change the other day. I shot a little video of it. No big deal. It was just a basic water change. I didn't do anything with the filter. I didn't even get in there and wipe down the glass. I've been talking for a while about getting in here and doing some major work, cleaning some more of the substrate out of the bottom, and it's just one of those things that's not a priority to me. I do have other stuff going on. I've got other stuff going on right now that's costing me money. So the idea of working on an existing tank and buying new substrate and all that kind of stuff, because the substrate I intend to put in there is not cheap. I'm going to add some new plants to it when I revamp it. So all of this stuff is just kind of stuff that'll happen when I get to it in my own time. Probably over the winter is when it'll really, get started on this in earnest. I'll get, a little more time on my hands. The weather will be colder, and I'll be spending a lot more time down here in the basement doing projects here in the fish room. So no hurry on this. Again, nothing really going on. I do plan on getting in here eventually and removing all of this floating vegetation. You can almost see how it's like sagging down in the middle, and that is just because of the heavy mats of cyanobacteria that's growing all through this floating water sprite. Not hurting the tank in any way. It's just an eyesore, and it's really blocking a lot of the light down at this end of the tank, so I'm going to get in there and remove that, and then I can replace it with some other water sprite. I have enough of it around in my other tanks. I also got a little bit of excitement the other day. I thought my angelfish were spawning. This is the female here that we're looking at, and then the albino right there is the male of my mated couple. And while they were showing some pre-spawning behavior the other day, nothing ever became of it. I didn't see anything else after that. I've seen no indication of them cleaning any areas. The aggression has gone back to normal. You can see there that the male is actually down on the far end of the tank, and the German blue angelfish right there in the center of the screen is another male that is, he's the oddball out. And you can see these two aren't really showing a ton of hostility towards each other. So I think whatever I was seeing, I don't know if that was pre-spawn or if it was a false alarm or what, but it kind of fizzled out and nothing ever really became of it. And like I said, you can see right there that I'm not really even experiencing any aggression between the two males. And then the female, is doing her thing all the way down here at the other end of the tank by herself. So definitely don't think I've got a spawn coming up, but we'll see, and I'll keep you updated as to anything that does occur. Moving along to my black ghost knifefish tank. This is another one that nothing has really gone on in. I did notice last night, I was looking at this tank closely, and I have one Corydoras catfish in here, and I do not see him at the moment. Well, there's my black ghost. I just put a little food in there a few minutes ago. It is early in the morning, and I just went around and fed everybody. So I was hoping he might come out and make a little bit of an appearance while we were looking at his tank. But I do have a single Corydoras in there. I put quite a few in when I first switched the tank over. I put 10 of them in there, and eventually they all died but one. I think it has to do with my water. I struggle to keep Corys alive, and I think it's because of the odd water I have. But the Cory I saw last night, the one that was still in here, and I'm really trying to find him, I noticed that all of his barbels were gone. And I've seen pictures, you know, in books of like, don't ever let this happen to your fish kind of pictures of Corys that have had their barbels all worn down. But I've never seen that in person. I've certainly never seen it in any of my fish. So I'm not sure what's going on with that Cory. I don't believe it is the substrate. I hear people say that, you know, if the substrate's too coarse, they'll wear their barbels down. I simply don't believe that. My experience shows me quite the opposite of that. They're not going to wear their barbels down if you've got substrate like this. I have substrate like this in most of my tanks, and I never have issues. What I think the problem could be is the fact that I've got all of these tiger barbs in here, and tiger barbs are known to be nippers. And while I was just saying the other day that I've never really seen any issue with them, I've never seen any real aggression with my tiger barbs, I'm wondering if maybe the tiger barbs are not responsible for nipping all the barbels off of this catfish. I don't know. I'm just going to keep a closer eye on it, and one of the projects today that I'm going to be doing, it's another rainy day, so I won't be working. I'll be spending the day down here in the fish room. I want to try to get him out of there and put him in the quarantine tank and see what's going on with him and see if he's not ill, or if it is really something's actually wearing the barbels off, or something has been biting his barbels off. I don't know. But I don't like to see animals suffering, so I'm going to get him out of there and put him hopefully in an environment where he'll either be able to recover or whatever's injuring him will go away. So that's my only real update on this tank. My 20 long open top. Normally it looks a lot brighter because I've got this piece of cardboard up here blocking the light. It just kind of cuts the glare down off of other things in the room. And when you take all the glare off the top of the tank and just look at it, it actually is a much nicer looking tank. Now it's open on both sides, so you're kind of seeing some junk on the other side of the room through the tank. You know, in particular that green stuff that's right there behind the piece of wood. That's not part of the tank. That's just something you're seeing on the back of my basement, so try not to pay too much attention to that. But I got in here the other day. I did a nice big water change. I really vacked the gravel out. This tank has a lot of small fish in it, and it produces a lot of mulm and fish waste and stuff at the bottom, so it can get pretty unsightly pretty quickly. And the green slime cyanobacteria is in this tank too. It's just one of those things that I just stay on top of it. It's not that big of a deal. But it was definitely in need of a glass cleaning, and I got in there and I cleaned off the plants a little bit. I took the wood out and I cleaned that off with a scrub brush in the sink and put it back in and wiped everything down. And now that I've got this tank looking good again, it's just one of those like, now I want to keep it again. Every time I do that, you know, I am in the process of breaking down this end of the room. I'm going to remove all of these tanks, and I'm going to do something different down here. Not sure when yet, but that is something that I'm slowly working on. Again, it's all just comes down to a matter of money. I just can't afford to do anything right now. But once I got this tank cleaned up, now I feel reluctant to tear it down and break it down again, because this is a really nice looking tank. Fortunately, there's no hurry, and I also, probably in a week or so, this will be all covered with green slime again, and I won't really mind breaking it down because I'll remember what a pain in the butt it is to maintain it all the time. But that's really all that's going on in this tank. My Brackish tank, same thing. I'm in the process of breaking it down. Well, I'm not really in the process of breaking it down. I'm in the process of setting up another tank, and once that tank is set up and established, I will go ahead and move the animals from this tank to the other tank, and then I will go ahead and just shut this one down altogether. And once it's clean, I can get it emptied out and sterilized, and, you know, I'll have myself another 20-gallon tank sitting around waiting for something to go in it. So I've been in there this week. I've done about 5 major water changes and siphons, and scraped the glass down and wiped the glass down and pulled stuff out and cleaned it off and put it back in. And I've done a ton of work on this tank this week, and as a result, it actually looks pretty nice. So once again, as soon as I see it looking good, it makes me want to not tear it down. I really do like the open top aspect of it. It's a little risky because puffers can be jumpers if they get too startled. They get pretty boisterous up near the surface, and it's not so much that they jump. It's almost like they bounce off the glass. They just swim so furiously that they sort of come up and out of the water. But every time I've seen him do anything like that, it's at the edge of the glass. He doesn't just jump out of the water in the middle of the tank the way a fish you might associate with being a jumping type fish would be, like a killifish or something like that. A gourami even will just get startled and come flying up out of the water. He doesn't really do that. But he does move in such a way that having an open top tank is a bit of a risk. He's been in there for over 2 years now, so I'm not too worried about it anymore. But I'm a little nervous when I get in there and I'm doing water changes and he's starting to get, scared and running around. And, one of these days I'm afraid he's going to bang himself a little too hard and pop him right out of the tank. So he will be in a new tank that has a hood on it, and it's going to be completely different, but we'll get to that in a minute. I'm just trying to give a little bit of video of him swimming around and enjoying this tank because it looks really good, and it won't look this way for very long. My quarantine tank down there doesn't have anything in it at the moment, but hopefully later today, as I mentioned, I'm going to have my little corridors swimming around in there and see if that little smoother gravel bed in the bottom doesn't help him out and help him to recover. My snail tank, again, is just a snail tank. I did have somebody ask me recently about my puffer, and they don't know where to get snails for their puffer. I go to my local big chain pet store and my local fish store whenever, well, I call it my local fish store. That's actually further away, but it's more of a mom and pop type fish store. Both of them, if they've got time and they're not too busy, if you just ask a lot of times, explain your situation, they're more than happy to go through their tanks and pull some of the nuisance snails out of the tank. They got to do that anyway as part of their job, keeping the tanks clean. And hey, if it helps you out and, makes a customer happy and so on and so forth, there you go. My big chain pet store gives them to me for free. My other fish store usually charges me $1 or something, but they give me a bag of 30 or 40 of them, and they just kind of have to charge me something because they are taking an employee's time to go around and collect snails up for me. But if you do need snails, if you are setting up a brackish tank or you have a puffer and you wonder where to get snails, just ask for them. They're not sold as feeder snails. They're actually just nuisance pond snails. But a lot of times you can get them for free. And then, of course, I throw them in this tank, and then they live in there until I feed them as needed. And the idea is that they will breed. The only problem is I don't put enough food in there to really blow the nitrates up in that tank the way I should to really get an exploding snail population. It's kind of odd. People have problems growing, exploding snail populations in their tank, and yet I have trouble growing snails in a tank that's specifically for growing snails out in. Anyway, this is my T-bar / gudgeon tank, and I still have 6 remaining rainbow fish in there, so I'm very happy about that. I make sure I keep that gudgeon very well fed. Don't know if I included this in my last update, probably not. The gudgeon did eat one of the rainbow fish. It was the smallest one that was in there. There was a big feeding frenzy one night as I was feeding everybody, and somehow or another one of the rainbow fish ended up in the gudgeon's mouth. And I did get them separated, but I think enough injury had occurred to the fish that as it was swimming funny later in the evening, the gudgeon did eventually find it again and go ahead and make a meal out of it. Before I went to bed that night, I checked and looked, and sure enough, just the very end of its tail fin was sticking out of the gudgeon's mouth. So at that point, there was no way I was going to remove them or separate them. Since then, I've been doing my best to keep the gudgeon well fed. I'm doing my best to grow those rainbows out rapidly. They are getting a lot bigger already. I've been feeding them quite a bit, and I'm really happy to say that the rainbow fish's color is really starting to come in too. So that's exciting. I'm waiting to see how beautiful they actually get as they mature. They school nicely, they swim nicely, really enjoyable fish. I'm really happy with my purchase. Again, they were not cheap fish, they were pretty expensive, so that was quite a costly meal that I gave to that gudgeon. But it was an accident, and fish are going to do what fish are going to do. I knew that was a risk when I put them all in there. But I think I'm in the clear now. I think these rainbow fish are big enough now that the gudgeon doesn't even attempt to go after them. And then the T-bar, of course, is not a fish eater, so I don't really worry about him. He's just kind of cranky and chases people away from his house whenever they get too close to it. So that's no big deal. I'm not worried about that at all. So all in all, this gudgeon tank has turned out to be a really, really cool tank. I'm really happy with the way it's going so far. The plants are growing in beautifully. The T-bar is doing exactly what I hoped he would do. He's building and constructing and making caves and digging holes and doing all the things that cichlids like to do. And then, of course, all the plant cover gives that gudgeon plenty of place to hide and lurk in the bushes and look cool doing that. And he just comes out and swims around the tank and is very visible at the same time. He's not a very reclusive fish at all. So all in all, very, very happy with this tank. And can't say last anymore. I've actually got 2 more tanks to go now. This is my 125, and I've got to stand halfway across the room to get the whole thing in. Don't think I've got anything to talk about going on in this tank. I did shoot a little bit of video recently, just some odds and ends kind of stuff. My elephant nose in there feeding the other day. I think I shot some video of my tenopoma swimming around, just, you know, being a tenopoma doing his thing, nothing specific. I did do a water change recently. I removed a little bit of the water sprite and trimmed that out. It's been a while since I've done that, so that may even have been included in my last update video. Otherwise, not really much of anything going on in here. I have noticed, actually, one little thing that's starting to concern me. I have one female rainbow fish in this tank that is fairly small. In fact, that is her right there, not there, but that one, that sort of duller, paler colored fish in the back. And the Congos are in there spawning again. They do this all the time. You can see the males doing their dance and flashing and, you know, showing each other how beautiful they are, and then they will pair off with the females and scatter eggs. I really would like to one day see some baby Congos swimming around in here. They're egg scatterers, so I can't imagine at some point some of those eggs don't get scattered into places that nobody can get to them. I know that elephant nose fish can really get down into the nooks and crannies, but you'd think some of the eggs would go somewhere that they would be out of harm's way, and I'm sure any little fry would get gobbled up pretty quickly. But, you know, you think I'd get a chance to at least see some fry before they got eaten. But in all the years I've had these Congos, and in the frequency with which they spawn, and they do this all the time, really, they do this all the time, I've never seen babies. So if I ever do, believe me, I will be very excited about that, and I will get that on video. I would love to see some little young Congo tetras swimming around this tank. That would be fantastic. Really, really cool fish. Really, really like my Congo tetras. But I do have that very small female that I was mentioning and talking about. And I believe my tenopoma has taken it upon himself to decide he's going to eat her. So every time he's, you know, hasn't been fed in a few hours, he's kind of stalking her around the tank. I get it where she's down in the corner hiding between some rocks, and then he's lurking up over top of her, looking straight down on her. I definitely think I'm going to have some issues with that, either until she grows out or until he kills her. I don't think he can actually eat her. I don't think she's big enough, or I don't think she's small enough to really actually fit in his mouth. But the attempt will certainly be enough to kill her. If you've ever seen a tenopoma, excuse me, if you've ever seen a tenopoma feeding, either striking at something on the surface or striking at another fish, it is a violent strike. So something as, you know, delicate as a small Congo tetra right there. I don't know if you noticed in the center, you saw a couple of male and a female got side by side and lined up, and then they did their little egg scattering thing. When the two males are side by side, that's just, you know, competitive display. But when you see the male and the female line up side by side, like she's waiting for somebody to come join her, and then they will sort of do just like that. They'll do the side by side little dance, and then they'll twitch and separate really quickly. And when they do that, if you look really closely, you'll see a bunch of really, really, really tiny little eggs go scattering away from them. And then, of course, everybody else moves in and then just gobbles up the eggs as soon as they come out. So watching the Congos spawn is always fun, but watching one of my girls get chased around by that tenopoma is not. So sooner or later, I'm probably going to have to shoot the video where he finally took a shot at her and hit her made contact with her, and that impact probably alone would be enough to kill her. So hopefully that's not going to happen, but we'll see. It's just one of the chances you take. I've got this Tenopoma. He's large, and he's a piscivore. He eats other fish for a living in the wild, and he's a big boy now. So, that's what you get when you have a fish like that in your tank. So this tank hopefully is going to be my project today. This is going to be my new Brackish tank. All of these plants are just in there floating. That's a bunch of Java fern that I pulled out of my gourami tank not long ago. And you can't really see them right now, but all of this dark stuff down here is the rocks that I've collected that we're going to be putting in this tank. And I have freshwater in it at the moment, but we're going to go over that. We're going to discuss why I have freshwater in it at the moment, how we're going to convert it over to brackish, why I'm doing it slowly, etc. I did just shoot a video about brackish water and about a brackish tank, so I'm going to continue that discussion when I work on this, and I'll sort of discuss what I'm doing and why I'm doing it as we go along. So look forward to that video coming up too. But this is going to be my new brackish tank, and it'll sit right here as you come in the room next to my 125. That will allow me to remove those 3 tanks down here at this end of the room, and then this whole area is just going to be one larger tank that's going to fill that area in. So last but not least is my crayfish tank, and I really don't have anything at all going on in here to talk about. The last of my minnows got eaten several days ago. There was a slough last week, and that's really about it. So there's just 2 crayfish in there. They just kind of crawl around and do their crayfishy thing. They forage and eat and dig, and most of the time they just hide unless I've got some food in the tank or the lights are out, and then they come out and they get a little more active. I have noticed this flower pot here in the left-hand corner usually is moved away from the corner when I come down in the morning. So somebody gets up there and crawls around and gets behind it and pushes it out away from the glass as they're foraging around. Crayfish regularly come up out of the water. I've actually seen them up out of the water, out in their natural habitat. I've been out fishing or whatever and seen some movement along the shoreline, and you'll see some crayfish several inches away from the water chewing on something or eating something, and then they get startled and they crawl back in the water and swim away. So not uncommon at all for crayfish to crawl up out of the water. If you do want to keep crayfish, you've got to have some sort of apparatus. Like a friend of mine built this acrylic for me, and it's basically just a collar that sits on top of the tank and allows it, to keep the crayfish in. They will climb anything. If you've got a cord that goes up and out, like if you notice in the back corner there where the cord goes through, I've got the acrylic notch so I can allow the cord to go out. The crayfish would crawl up that cord and get out of this tank in a half a heartbeat if I didn't have that acrylic collar on top of that. So keep that in mind if you ever do keep crayfish. Either keep a tightly closed, very tightly sealed lid, or put some sort of apparatus or device on it that will prevent them from crawling out, because they're very good climbers and they're very strong. They will move stuff out of your way if they have to. They'll lift the lid up unless you got a brick sitting on top of it. So that completes the tour. We've gone all the way around. We're back to where we started at my 29 miscellaneous. So sorry for the long video, but like I said, it's been quite a while since I've done one of these, and I don't really know how much catching up I had to do. So I'm going to get going. I got to go buy some more plants that are going to go in that brackish tank, and then come home and get working on that. So as I said before, go ahead and subscribe. That way you won't miss anything, and we will be doing that video on that brackish tank really soon, so you don't want to miss that either. That's going to be a good one. So thanks for watching this one, and I'll see you real soon on the next one.